Gregtech New Horizons is an insane technical mod pack requiring thousands of hours, all in pursuit of one goal: the Stargate. I've always had a fascination with tech, and as a puzzly YouTuber and Minecraft fan, I've always wanted to complete an expert tech-based mod pack at some point as part of my bucket list. And why not go for the big daddy of them all, Gregtech New Horizons. Today, join me on my trip through the first chapter of Gregtech, where I'll be producing the Cactus Throne, creating a tinker smeltery to make the tools I'll need to do so, farming like an industrial engineer, creating charcoal from an immense amount of cacti, and creating the heart of our GTNH world, all to complete the Stone Age. You know, I never really thought that I was going to actually be doing this, so you're a little, just a little late to the party on this one. In all honesty, yeah, no, it's GTNH. It's Gregtech New Horizons, the tech mod pack of all time, and this episode's gonna be a little bit of a weird one for you. We're going to be playing a lot of catch-up. Don't be concerned or anything, but, yeah, no. I've got a lot of stuff that I need to show you, and I've been having a lot of fun with this mod pack, and I figured that you guys would actually like to enjoy it. At least according to my Discord, you guys would enjoy this. Don't mind the fact that my skin is entirely ruined by being in the older version of Minecraft, because GTNH runs on 1.7.10, and my skin is made for 1.16 plus, so yeah. But anyways, yeah, no, story time. This has been a hell of an absolute experience so far. What with how my first night was. Oh, Jesus, okay, alright. No, God, oh, God, I'm out of food. Of course I'm out of food when there's a skeleton chasing after me. What the frick? Nope. Okay, there, oh Jesus, there is zombies over there, there is creepers up in that hill, there is more things over there. Okay, everything sucks. I am digging myself into a pit so that I do not die. Why does everything hate me? To trying to legitimately survive the night and actually, you know, make it through this horribly terrible experience. Oh, come the frick on! Oh, okay. That's just wonderful. Yeah, those first few nights were really absolutely terrible. After attempting to survive my way through my first night of just running off into the distance, I inevitably would make my way down to this icy river here, where I would inevitably die to starvation and a bunch of mobs surrounding me all at once, which was just kind of a terrible experience overall. I would inevitably die right around about here, and my return journey by making my way across this swamp was one that was absolutely terrible. Okay, I have been starving, and I have been struggling for the past 30-40 minutes or so. Maybe this time it'll be fine. I will live. It's a fresh day. I've got the sun at my back. I will have at least a decent chance of getting there. Hopefully it is not too bad. Oh God. Oh, okay. Oh my God. Okay. Who designed... Oh God, this mud is absolutely terrible. Okay. I freaking hate this mud. Oh no. It slows me down every time I bonk into it. Oh no. Okay, we're a little low on hunger, but I think... Is that the end of the swamp, basically? What the hell is that thing? No, don't tell. Oh my God, are the mountains absolutely massive in this pack? No. No way. And while I did have an untimely death there right at the base of the mountain, I did inevitably make my way back, climb my way up top, and then immediately have to spend my first night trapped in a tree. I would do another dramatic recreation for you. However, we're actually kind of currently sitting where said tree was, here. Yeah, it's very funny. I kind of basically based where one of my most traumatic experiences was. Okay, I have been stuck here for quite a fair bit. This is absolutely horrid. But at least the mobs can't get me up here. At least I'm fine in my nice, safe tree. And while my first nights absolutely sucked, it inevitably ended up in me creating this wonderful little cottage right here. You see, in this tight little cove that I had created for myself, I decided that I wanted to build a nice little comfy and cozy little cottage. And I would spend my nights overlooking the edge of the mountains and looking out into these wonderful trees that have now grown in my face. But I also wanted to build myself a nice and neat little farm, which had basically started as just the wheat, the potatoes, a little bit of mustard and cucumbers, and some carrots, and inevitably gained myself a pumpkin, which has been sitting here quite beautifully for quite some time. However, this was not without the pain of discovering Gregtech's absolutely horrid crafting requirements. And oh boy, are they wonderful. Let's do a quick little showcase. If I were to ask you how much wood you think a crafting table would take, you'd normally say it takes 4 wood planks, correct? You're wrong. In Gregtech, it's double that much. Oh, and guess what? There's more. You see, Gregtech requires not only 2 logs to craft a crafting table, but it also requires 2 flint to do so as well. It was doing this that made me realize just how much hell I was in for in this pack. For you see, making my way through the crafting table quest, finding out how all the quests work, and inevitably getting my tools set up to help build this place, I inevitably discovered, making my way through all of this, just how truly painful some of these quests could actually be. It was during this time that I inevitably expanded my orchard not only to include an apple tree, but also an orange tree. And then with that expansion, also made me kind of run around and look to build a sort of terrace garden, which as of current now looks like this, but at one point was more reduced to just these wonderful little crops right here, which has been expanded upon as I have gone through. Don't mind the watery mess, there's a story to that one. You see, in the early game, Jesus Christ, okay. You see, in the early game of Gregtech, probably the most dangerous and annoying mob is what is known as the drowning creeper. You thought normal creepers were bad when they blow up your house and just make it an absolute mess? Well, imagine a creeper that whenever it decides to explode on you, traps you in an orb of water, which when you mine out of, has 1,000,000 silverfish in it. Yeah, Gregtech mobs don't really screw around with you. Almost every mob in Gregtech is infernal. For those of you who know what that means, you get to skip this little explanation. But infernal mobs are normally 10 times as difficult and basically are meant to be mini bosses just with every single mob. And nearly every single Gregtech mob is an infernal. Alongside that, there has been about 10 variations of each mob added to the game, the Drowning Creeper being one of them that I had a horrible run-in with. He made an absolute mess of my farm. Said mess was relatively easily solved, and is when I decided to fully settle down, actually. It's kind of funny that that thing blowing up here is what ended up really making me settle down once I had started farming and all that, because I kind of felt like I had to clean up the watery mess that I had made, and it inevitably provided me with all of the water that I would use to water all of my crops. But that being said, that doesn't nearly account for all of the early game messes that I had handled. Oh no, no, no. This little cottage was merely just the beginning of everything that I wanted to do in the early game, and so was the farm that is outside as well. You see, at this point, I kind of felt like it might be a good idea to go and travel. My cottage was filled up with a bunch of chests, and I needed to fill said chests with items. In doing so, I traveled a few directions, and inevitably ended up finding this wonderful little roguelike dungeon and this walled-off village over here. This introduced me to not only a few things, like getting me a few early alloys and a few early pages and books, but it also gave me a lot of my extra crops that I ended up using in the farm. Additionally, beyond this, I was able to find what would become the pressure plate that has been sitting behind me this whole time by that door. Do not mind the burning zombie that is sitting there trying to eat my butt as I talk to you and give you this wonderful story. I think there is a burning skeleton that has also joined him, by the way. Yeah, mobs are terrible. Nope, just a normal skeleton, I think. Or, nope, that might have been, like, a danger. I don't even know all the damn mob names. There's way too many of them. Additionally, beyond this, as I didn't really want to go into the roguelike dungeon early, I would end up running past this, now actually sort of surviving my nights with a few early game armor sets of just random pieces that were dropping off some of the mobs that I had killed, because at this point I had finally gotten myself a sword to survive the nights, and inevitably made my way over to this village. This village is actually very special, as I'm pretty sure in the late game, or well, not late game, in the late Steam Age will be where I finally grab my first few bees, as there is an apiary villager in this village, and was also where I ended up stealing a few more crops and also found my second roguelike dungeon, which gave me a few other things that I could take from the surface. One of my other major adventures was across the forest that I had found myself in. This found me a few of the crops with the trees, found me this wonderful and but ugly taiga shoreline, and inevitably made me end up over here in this village, where I would take a few more things. I think this is where I found my steel that I got very early game too, where I would inevitably run off to this cherry blossom biome, and then die and have to tragically come and reclaim all my stuff. And while we've covered said wonderful adventures very quickly, these adventures also are actually kind of what got me through the early game into the Stone Age. Yeah, no, we haven't even reached the Stone Age yet, and I was already building this wonderful little cottage and a farm alongside it. Just wait. It gets more complex, because there's a lot more that I wanted to do with this world. You see, one of the first thing that Gregtech asks of you once you enter into the Stone Age is the gathering of gravel, sand, clay, and stone, so that you can finally prepare for all of the immense crafting that is to follow. All of these quests require a huge, and I mean huge, amount of gravel, sand, and clay, and also stone, which would inevitably lead you into the rest of these major quest lines. It's around about this time, as I was still kind of dealing with the fallout of the creeper, that I had learned that all water in this world is actually finite. Yeah, that's right, we don't get infinite water sources in this world. That is something that only vanilla Minecraft players get. However, as I was working towards getting that all figured out and handling everything else that was going on, I finally had a bit of a brain blast, especially with what Gregtech told me within its quest book, One of the early game sources of water is actually surprisingly the humble cactus. For you see, cactus has this wonderfully great usable effect of being able to be converted directly into cactus juice. Cactus juice also being a meal that we can have, but also something that lets me create water. With the infinite creation of water now at my disposal, I had on hand effectively the keys to the kingdom. With water available and freely usable, and a cactus farm built to the nines that would be able to help me ascend the throne of Cactus King, I was able to finally create a decent amount of paper, using all of the wood that is grown around me to basically make a bunch of wooden pulp. Wood pulp was a relatively expensive recipe, requiring me to take bark and grind it up in a mortar. This would give me 2 wood pulp for each bark, but with the entirety of all of the wood pulp combined, I was able to use some of that water to create paper at a relatively expensive price. With paper in hand, we were able to immediately turn to tinkers, which has a wonderfully good benefit in this mod pack, being that it is effectively the way to make absolutely god tier tools. With my wonderful tools starting to be assembled, I was able to make my way into, well, a whole bunch of different things. I felt that it was probably time to take a trip into, well, not only the mines, but also into some of those roguelike dungeons that I had discovered. And this is how I ended up finding out something very interesting about Gregtech, actually. And it's one of my favorite little things about it. You see, in Gregtech, there is something that actually makes mining a little bit more interesting than normal. Every single ore within Gregtech isn't actually found in little tiny balls or veins within the ground. Instead, it is actually delegated to specialized chunks across the world, which relatively equate out to every single 3n plus 1 chunks from the world's central chunk at 0, 0. This actually makes for a very interesting chunk map wherein, honestly, everything can be found by just figuring out the grid and then using said grid to identify where all of these veins are. Effectively, once you find a chunk which should have a large vein in it, all you need to do is dig down from the surface until you find something. Using this, I was able to gather a large amount of the many different ores that exist within Gregtech, assembling what would become, inevitably, my large collection of resources, and slowly would build up towards the major goals at the time: the Tinker's Smeltery and coke ovens. While the Tinker's Smeltery was the latter of the two that I solved, coke ovens were an absolute pain to get going. For you see, each and every single one of these coke oven bricks is effectively 3 clay and 5 sand. This also requires a lot of work, because guess what? Alongside all of that, for every single brick block, you need 4 of those bricks, which means just one brick block, which means that every single brick block within this one little 3x3 right here requires a grand total of 12 clay and 20 sand. Not to mention, it also has to be formed with a brick form press thingy. I don't know really what to call it. It's a brick mold, okay? And then it has to be smelted, and then it can be assembled. With all of this wonderful stuff combined, I was able to inevitably build out what would be, at first, kind of a cave of these things, but has evolved into this wonderful little hallway, which is attached directly beneath my cactus farm. As you can see, that chest right there above my head is the chest that actually receives all of the items from said cactus farm. And I was able to steal a bunch of hoppers from the roguelike dungeon to actually make it a bit more automated, so that I wasn't just sitting there Terraria style, which is how a lot of the first evenings were done. Now, you see, the coke oven is used to make quite a few important things within Gregtech. That being, well, if it were here actually, charcoal and creosote oil. Both of which are actually very hard to get, and this follows a very realistic process to how they're made actually within real life. However, I have some other things other than charcoal that I could make with the coke ovens, namely cold coke, but also probably one of the greatest usages of my cactus that I had been getting so far, cactus coke. You see, cactus can be burned in the coke oven to not only make cactus charcoal, but a little bit of creosote oil. And then said cactus charcoal can be burned again in the coke oven to make just a little bit more creosote oil and cactus coke, with cactus coke working as effectively a singular coal. This effectively meant that my charcoal reserves were basically handled, and I will never actually need to worry about fuel ever again, at least in terms of furnace arrangements. I know that every single Gregtech player just thought that, oh, I'm saying that I'm set for fuel for the rest of the game. Oh no, I know what I'm getting into. I know that I'm nowhere near set for fuel. I know. Trust me. I am aware that I just said the falsest of lies whenever it's taken without the context of talking about furnace fuel, okay? Chill out. With my coke ovens ever hungry for more cactus charcoal, I inevitably started on the seared brick adventure. Seared brick being the main ingredient for making a, well, wonderful little mess that is the Tinker's Smeltery. For you see, seared brick requires an unfired seared brick, which requires grout, as we know from those who enjoy Tinker's Construct. But as you can see, each block of grout is equal to one unfired seared brick, which I believe is actually different than what it normally is, where each block of grout is equal to 4 of these, and then can be made into a seared brick block in and of itself. Grout requires not only sand and not only gravel, but also clay dust and more water. This means that for every 4 grout, there is another 8 cactus down the drain and a whole bunch of different gravel. Clay dust requires those clay balls that we mentioned earlier, but has no innate immediate crafting, as you can see. The only way that you could do that is either through making clay blocks directly, or by using clay balls and directly grinding them into mortar. This was truly one of the biggest gathering tasks that I had set out for myself, requiring a grand total of just over 1,600 clay balls to be gathered, a bunch of different gravel and sand, and inevitably not ending up needing nearly as much as I ended up using, because I found out that seared stone just happened to kind of be the easier material to get. You see, one of the great things about the Tinker's Smeltery is you could throw a bunch of cobblestone in here, and then, you know, just casually, whenever you want to, into this casting basin, pour out an entire block of seared stone. It requires way too much cobblestone to, in all honesty, make this a fair and equivalent exchange. However, in doing so, you get a seared stone, which I would then take up this wonderful cobblestone staircase right here and build onto, inevitably intending to transform this into the chimney for my home. One of the many things that Gregtech doesn't really tell you about, but has been confirmed kinda by a few of its devs, is its focus on base building. Particularly one of the more popular people being Soul 9, which is one of the many great inspirations for this pack. Also, all of the Project Singularity crew, and also the wonderful mess that is just everything that Hecuba does has kind of inspired me to be here. Yes, I know, Hecuba, you've said don't play this pack, play TFG. I do not care. I listen to my own ramblings and chaos. As we start to approach the modern day of where I am in the game, I decided to build out this giant addition to my cottage, which kind of makes the little cottage small, and not really a cottage anymore, as I'm sure you all have realized, but still really fits my building style and has helped me experiment a little bit with what I want to do in this game. As you can see as I move throughout the inside, I've been practicing with using the chisel to try and get some unique and interesting textures. And one of my real favorite spots is this old part of the house where the cottage is, where I've made a lot of these little deviations of the wood that are really dense, but altogether make it a very eye-catching and appealing part of the base. As we move into some of the other areas, I just haven't really had the time and the chisel work yet to actually sit through it. But one of the other major things you will definitely notice that I'm trying to do as I work through is I'm trying to add a lot more height variation in my design. Something that I've kind of realized I tend to lack as both an architect and a designer in Minecraft, where there isn't enough up and down, and I kind of make things a little too flat. This, in turn, has added to become one of the greater additions of a major balcony that I have added over kind of my favorite view of the entire world so far, just extending out into the horizon, above the clouds, might I mention, because this mountain is that freaking huge. And oh boy, I need to talk about the elephant in the room now, don't I? You see, one of the early game quests in GTNH requires you to not only figure out how you can gather a whole bunch of wood, but also kind of teaches you a really nice way to do so, what with the existence of things such as the redwood tree. This being also a quest reward that is given from said quest that I am talking about, which I've kind of been manhandling as the way that I've built my house up there on the hill. As you can see from the redwood bark being built in as the main structural component for the entire base. This redwood bark style has not yet migrated itself on over to the farming area, but inevitably I'm considering that it probably should. I might keep it as the willow wood just because willow is so effective, and the fact that this place is kind of already all built up and set up with its willow wood. I just haven't gone through and sat down and built out the walls yet. It's a whole mess. One of the other great times to sit over here is right at sunrise, assuming that there isn't a mob behind me trying to kill me, which, you know, more recently there isn't, but this has been honestly one of my favorite spots in the world, just to kind of sit and ponder. If I could make it so that my AFK spot were there without also being concerned that a mob would perfectly sneak up behind me like that, right on cue, guys, actually, good job, and oh great, a plague zombie has came in and immediately made me hate my life, and this is why we've got my AFK spot over here. If it weren't for that, that spot would be actually genuinely probably one of my favorite spots in the world. However, favorite spots in the world do not account for the sheer horror that Gregtech has set out in front of me, which kind of leads us towards modern day. You see, rounding the corner after we get charcoal is sort of the excursion to get iron and also a bunch of redstone, which is where a lot of the GTNH mining system has came into play. Once you get iron though, you get the quest to unlock a wrench, which then opens the entire door to everything Gregtech has assembled. Hey guys, Editor Dabboy here, and stepping in for, normal Dabboy here, who's just gonna go on and explain how the entire pack is opened up. Let's talk about Gregtech's tools now that we've finally really started getting there. You may have already seen me having some fun with these crafting diagrams from some of the earlier clips, but now I really actually get the ability to kind of talk because, well, I can finally start interrupting myself without having, a past explanation going on. And dear lord, that crafting tree for the smeltery, that's a mess. So I wanted to see if we could simplify a little bit here, and we're gonna start actually by explaining the mortar. This is probably the first or the second tool that you craft in Gregtech. It requires 5 stone and 2 metals of either bronze, iron, or flint. I say metals here because, basically that's how it is. I'm pretty sure you can actually make it with a few others, but the mortar is a very early game tool that is used for making dust and a few things that need ground up, but basically has no use beyond steam. The hammer is next, and it takes 6 metals of any kind, including iron and beyond, plus a stick to make. This is mainly used for making things such as plates and stuff like that. Not me having just realized that I attached this to the wrong spot. Anyways, as I was saying, the hammer's main usage is to take metals and convert them into plates for later use. The other version of the hammer is the soft mallet, which uses wood instead of metals, and a few other materials can go in to basically be a hammer with a little bit of a softer touch. Think of how the difference between a normal hammer and like a wooden mallet is, basically. That's what this is. This is a mallet, and it's for softer little love taps rather than the full smash, compress, everything else. The next tool that we're looking at is the file, which takes 2 of those plates from earlier and combines them with a stick to make something that can be used to basically smoothen out surfaces or turn our iron bars into, well, iron rods. This is a very useful ability that will basically sit with us until we're in LV. Moving onwards from that, we need to take our file and our hammer plus 2 more of those plates to give ourselves a saw blade. Saw blades are very important as they go for 2 of the tools that we're going to be talking about here. One of which, requiring a stick, and that saw blade, is the saw. The saw is probably one of our most useful tools that we get right now, as it lets us multiply our wood output and lets us convert a lot of other things from, rods into basically a crafting chain that we'll explain down there. Anyways, again, taking our hammer and 6 more iron bars, we can actually craft that wrench that I am showcasing right now as, I'm talking about the whole, quest system. This is honestly a really easy tool to make, but will be probably our biggest friend in the near future when we're dealing with Steam, and not as much of a friend, but still as important once we're in LV. Now, this is a bit of a bigger tool to make, but can be made technically right now using 3 iron rods and 4 of any blue dye equivalent. And of course our hammer and our file. We can make ourselves a crowbar right now. This is mostly useless until we get into LV, just because there isn't anything that it really goes towards, but we can make it now. So it is a tool that we can, consider being put on the plate right now. Anyways, back in the tools that we actually care about right now, taking 2 iron rods, a stick, a file, and another one of our hammer usages, we can make ourselves a screwdriver. This has a few usages. It is a bit few and far between, but it does continuously show up throughout this segment of, well, the Stone Age. And if I'm really feeling hungry, a single plate, a single iron rod, our file, and our hammer can make ourselves the kitchen knife. A very useful tool for not only crafting, but also for just general food stuff that, helps us out in the long run. And of course, the other saw tool that we're going to be using a lot of, it requires 3 iron rods, 2 sticks, that saw blade, and makes us the iron microblock saw. This thing is secretly our way to cheese out the entirety of the crafting system that currently exists. Slabs are really expensive, but this honestly makes them pretty cheap. Likewise, stairs as well. Like, everything that is a thing smaller than a block is made much cheaper by the microblock saw. And while not yet required yet, this giant tool chain right here is technically achievable as soon as we get here. We take an iron rod, we cut it in half with the saw, we get 2 iron bolts. And then if we take those 2 iron bolts, sand them down together, we get an iron screw. That iron screw is then used alongside 2 more iron rods and 3 iron plates, alongside, our file, our hammer, and hey look, it's that screwdriver, to make wire cutters. Probably our most important tool from here on out once we reach LV and early into the Steam Age. Like, this is probably the most important tool in all of Gregtech right here. It makes sense why it's so expensive. This is where the pack truly begins, and where I kind of am currently. There's still a little bit more that I've sneakily gotten myself started on early, such as, well, something that you might have seen peeking over my shoulder every so often, IC2 crops, which are effectively how you do a lot of early game automation. You see, IC2 crops, and, well, this has been my main field for a while, don't worry about what's back there, we'll talk about that in a minute. IC2 has been effectively really strong. Some of the early game quests give you these wonderful things called ore berries. They hurt a lot to stand near, but not only do they have the wonderful benefit of being able to feed you a whole bunch of EXP, they also have the ability to give you a bunch of different resources. The EXP coming from the concentrated essence berry, and things such as copper and iron coming from their separate ore berries. Additionally, you can make bonsais out of these to get, or out of the trees in the world, to get things such as wood for building your home, paper from a papyrus crop, which has magically shown up. Seriously, how the frick did I get you? Or you can go absolutely insane and start grinding out all of the many different things that exist within the base game of Minecraft, and then mutate them into things beyond recognition, such as grapes. Again, how the frick did I get you? You're some amalgam of these, but what the frick are you? You are weird. These crops have been my lifeblood for a while. And yeah, no, we're now at the modern day, where really, in all honesty, it's kind of sad that my almost 80 hours of experience so far has been condensed into relatively 47 minutes of story time or something like that. Once I include editing, I don't know, it might be a little bit worse than that, but yeah, no, it's not that much, actually. Probably way less. So with that, I moved into expanding the base, trying to build upon what we have and making what would be the inevitable area for my Steam Age base. Of course, there were a few major hiccups here and there, but mostly this was a relatively peaceful experience. I mainly just was focused on mining and expanding upon my tools and my home and everything else that was going on, trying to add to what we had. Right now on screen, you can see me looking for a bunch of malachite so that I could get a bunch of copper to improve my pickaxe and repair it where necessary. Of course, once I had said pickaxe, I also realized that I needed a bunch of wood, so I went and grabbed all of that and continued using the wood that we've gathered to build upon the base. Overall, this room is a room that I've actually felt pretty happy with in terms of how it's turned out. It let me experiment a lot with texturing and let me experiment a lot with what I was wanting to do within the world, and kind of taught me a lot of major steps for building going forward. I mean, don't get me wrong, wood is not like an endgame building material, but it did have a lot of frickin' textures for me to use, and I had honestly a bit too much fun kind of doing like paletted block vomit is the best way to put it, I guess. But at the same time, there was some actual legitimate thought to what I was doing. Of course, moving forward, I also wanted to expand upon the garden space, and this was probably one of the greatest digs that I've done so far, more so than just like digging out a bunch of ore for, say, redstone or iron. And I had this really cool idea of having the water flow down from the ceiling, but I made a major mistake there and broke some of the crops, but I fixed it. It's okay. Moving on then, I wanted to add in this giant hallway which spans the entirety of the garden area so that I had an access route from my smithing / my main fireplace area. This kind of turned out to be a really helpful movement, as it kind of expands upon a lot of the different motions that I was kind of building. And it let me kind of do this really cool move where I'm able to take this hallway all the way out to where the end of the line is, out to this massive balcony that I'm going to construct here in a little bit. Overall, it's kind of this really cool take on one of the mountain bases that I like to do. And overall, I've really enjoyed designing this base so far. With the upper layer all done, I kind of realized that honestly I wanted way much more space than what I was going to have. I basically had planned out what was originally 4 plots of crops, but I kind of realized with how many different crops there were, nah, I'd want at least 8. So I very quickly ripped out a massive amount of area, which also, in essence, let me expand upon what was going to be the additive system, and then I started working on digging out a bunch of crop plots for the lower area. All in all, the major dig there took about 2-ish hours relatively, but now I needed a bunch of dirt, so I took it upon myself to head out to the major dungeon that I have raided a few times for a multitude of different things, and turned it into kind of a bit of a wasteland, just grabbing a bunch of dirt. I then went to work on expanding upon the crop plots that I would need all across both the upper layer and in a little bit here, the lower layer as well. Honestly, this is probably like one of the most satisfying parts that I had, because I got to do some really cool stuff and just sit around and till the dirt while everything was being prepped, and it just was one of those really like peaceful moments overall. What wasn't peaceful was nearly drowning myself there like an idiot. So, with that wonderful farm all built and prepped and ready for us, I mean, minus all of the, surrounding area for it, we now have one major goal that we are looking for effectively the rest of the time that I'm in the Steam Age. The Stone Age. I'm an idiot. I can word. I know what words I'm saying. I'm excited to get to the Steam Age soon, okay? But we've got quite a major grind ahead of us, to put it simply. I want to gather a bunch of IC2 crops that are, basically going to set us up for the Steam Age and beyond. Having very early game automation, even if it is about to be replaced by bees shortly after I get into LV, is, pretty good to get started on, and I think this is a good idea for us to work on. So, let's make ourselves a crap ton of crop sticks, and let's get down to business. You know, it's great whenever you're muted and you're trying to do stuff. So behind me here is all of the wonderful saplings and farm that we're going to need to basically help control our infrastructure for the base. And while I don't necessarily intend to use nothing but oak, spruce, and the redwood for an extensive period of time, having this farm set up really gives us the infrastructure we need to continuously build up the base and continue to work on, well, just expansion as necessary. Having moved those papyrus and the grapes from upstairs down into here, this is going to kind of be the area where I keep track of all of my little mutations and experiments that are more, you know, for just getting more seeds, basically. Down here is kind of going to just be our sort of Wild West crop that we can use whatever we need for, and also, you know, we can get some enrichment out of it via propagation of new things that I don't necessarily 100% need, but are still good to have. And with that papyrus and that spruce moved, we finally get to transform this crop behind me into our oreberry farm, which can be highly useful for smeltery and prepping for the steam age. Just in general, it's a bunch of good things that we need, and I really want to get a bunch of these set up. We're going to start by propagating a few more essence berries in a little bit, but I also want to set up for, well, the mutations off of our general vanilla farm, which is going to be where we tend to just collect a bunch of different things and move, you know, everything forward, hopefully getting some weird stuff out of this. But yeah, we need more crop sticks already. I turned like 4 stacks into crop sticks. No, we need more. We need so much more. Now, one of the generally annoying parts about all this that I haven't necessarily mentioned yet is the wonderful part where we don't actually get to really know what many of these crops are unless we're being a little bit smart with it. See, we know that this is a melon, and earlier I grew this one as a mutation off of the melon pumpkins and these 2 sugarcane right here. Really, in all honesty, what that means is it was just a propagation from this melon, which was actually kind of rare in that scenario. But I uprooted it and moved it over to here, knowing that it's melons, because inevitably we want to see what stats this melon has. See, the thing with this, with IC2 crops is if you don't actually get the correct identification on anything, meaning you don't have the ability to use the Magni lens or anything else on it, you don't actually get to know what any of your stuff is at all. It's why both of these down here just say crop, and not that this is a papyrus, and this is a grape plant, because despite me knowing that this is a grapevine and this is papyrus, after having seen what they give me, we're not allowed to actually know their names until we can make glass to make the magnifying glass, which is highly annoying when we're after like 3 or 4 specific things to make steam age really easy. Meanwhile, once these are finished growing, we hopefully will be able to start producing all the different ore berries that we're after, which include tin, which is really one of the most important ore berries for the steam age. We're just waiting on this one to grow. Yeah, and this is definitely wheat. Yay, we gotta keep the blackberries. Wahoo! Seeing as we can tell that this is wheat, by the way, I'm just gonna punch this out, and hey, we actually do get to keep it. That'll get to sit right there, and we'll just pop that back into going. As soon as this is ready, I'm gonna clear it. And these 2, I'm still waiting on them to grow. I'm not sure if this one can grow or not. And this one, I forget whether or not it did grow and it just didn't work, but yeah, no. We'll wait for them to grow a little bit more, and then I will remove some of them. And while we're waiting on that, I'm gonna get these back up and producing again because we need that. Another new and weird one has just entered the chat. What are those little things? I have genuinely no idea what the frick those are. Also, it looks like we've got another pumpkin growing here, which is not what we want. And still waiting on a few other things. This one looks like it might be another similar crop to the carrots. And this one looks like it just regrew more wheat. I think, looking these over, we might have gotten some more grapes here. And those, if anything, look like mushrooms to me. I don't know about you guys, but if I were to guess, those are red mushrooms that we just got. Still, and I remember that this was flax. I just was being stupid, so yay, hopefully we get to move the flax downstairs soon. So we were able to move the flax downstairs, as you saw, and it's starting to really come together here as I'm starting to lay out all the structure work and just getting things, you know, put together. I'm pretty happy with how things are starting to look out. Just need to, you know, keep working on things, basically. And also, I need to remember, if I'm recording a clip, to unmute my mic, because I keep muting my mic like an idiot. Yeah. So, looking at these, it looks like our carrots just made some more carrots, in all honesty. I think we're ready to move that. Yes, we are. And while we do, let's also set that back up. This is almost ready, and I'm thinking these mushrooms are almost ready as well. We're really close. I just need like a little bit more, and those are some new seeds. They look interesting. Also, yeah, this grew even more wheat, and wow, okay, we're just getting wheat seeds out the wazoo. That is kind of nice for us. The good news of the propagating stuff. Also, dear Lord, I have too much stuff. Plant this here, plant this here. I will inevitably handle the output of all of these things. Just, dear Lord, there's too much. This is good. And we're almost ready for these. Well, I just had some proof of the temperamentality of the seeds here. Yeah, remember that acacia sapling that had grown in right here? Well, first off, now it's growing something very completely weird and different. But, yeah, I forgot what the seeds were, planted it down, and then my brain immediately went, oh, that's the acacia sapling, let's move it downstairs. Entirely forgetting that in doing so, because it hadn't yet grown, I had basically set it to its lowest state of retain on the seeds, and, yeah, no, we lost the acacia bonsai that we were growing, which would have been really good to have actually kept, because, hey, you know, extra bonsai to keep, yippee, and that would have been more wood to produce. That would have been nice for us, but no, I'm the idiot who just went and killed it immediately, like I am some dumbass. Yep, that's what I needed to do. That's what I needed to do. Alrighty, so I believe these mushrooms are ready. They were not. Sad, we just lost those. I should have actually gone and grabbed them. However, I do believe because we've been receiving a bunch of mushrooms from the different mobs that I actually have some that I can put in as, you know, placement or replacement for them. Yeah, I have one here. And then I also have a brown mushroom that I know we're going to be looking for at some point based off of the fact that, yeah, those two can both slot into the downstairs area where they're more for, well, actually, technically these should go over here because we know what they are. They're very vanilla. They're very easy. But again, the temperamentality of the seeds strikes, and I'm also very low on crops, so... What? Oh, you must need an extended amount of them. I definitely think we have messed up then. Yeah, oops. I'm kind of not looking forward to harvesting that one in the middle now. This is pumpkin. I have no idea what some of these are. Like, I'm hopeful, but yeah, we need to get some more crops going soon so that I can start doing some more stuff. Now, if I were to make a guess, 4 is what you need. That makes sense. Okay, these also have some sort of requirements that need to be met that I'm apparently meeting there, but not here. Very odd. Do they have a light level rec? Interesting and weird. Maybe they have like a different requirement. I'm not entirely sure, but they met the requirements over there. So now I'm like, okay, what's the difference? Nope, I just broke that. The pain of getting mushrooms to take. We got our brown mushrooms to go, but not our normal mushrooms. Okay, well, it kind of sucks that we've lost mushrooms, but we will still continue. Let's... Okay, that just didn't give me anything. Cool, cool, cool. This hasn't grown in a while. I'm starting to think that it can't grow. And this also is new, but looks very similar. Yeah, those are just basic pumpkins. We sadly didn't get lucky with them. So I'm not going to worry about putting those over there, but yeah, okay. We're now at the point where I'm waiting on these, and these to grow, and or in need of figuring out whether or not they need something special to grow to full. And if they do, we're going to kind of be a little bit sad because these are in spots that are not the easiest to, you know, do anything with, but that's also why we're doing the mutations up here instead of down below, because up here we have easy access to putting blocks down below to make these things actually give off the stuff that they need to give off. And again, we're still waiting on stuff to grow over here. I was able to get this plant finally, and it turns out it is a glow flower of some kind, which is very interesting. Also, this one's got something weird growing on it. I have some hopes, and I have some thoughts, and I'm hoping they're correct, because if they are, that means we finally got one of the plants that we want, but I'm not entirely sure, and we're still waiting on these, and I'm really starting to think that they are just not ready for something. I'm also waiting on my wood downstairs again because I decided I wanted to start building this wall out and start, you know, texturing some stuff as I go, and yeah. So, started doing some fun little building while we're waiting on some stuff downstairs to grow. And another huge amount of these gone and gotted. And now, back to more watching paint dry. You know, I was literally looking to try and identify what this thing was, but yeah, no, I get to see what it is. It's tomatoes! Oh my god, we got tomatoes! Okay, what the frick is this purple thing? What? What? I plant some stuff. Oh, you're bad. You are very bad. That is what we don't like. Showing up is the weeds. Yeah, no, I go to prep to start making some of the lower floor stuff, and I immediately come back and see whatever the frick that is. That looks like some more flax is growing. What? Purple? Guys, I don't mean to alarm you, but I think we might have our tin ore berries growing there. Now, I'm not 100% sure, but when those were sprouting, they were a different coloration than these iron ones, and a different coloration than those copper ones over there. And they looked a little, like, off silver, like, not exactly like they'd be the silver ore berries, so I have a good feeling about this, and that those are mayhaps our tin, but I'm not entirely sure. The good news is as soon as those things grow, we'll be in a good position, and I know how much they need to grow before, well, they look very similar to these or those, and then, you know, we'll be home free. If I can get those, you know, even just grown to there, we'll propagate by hand and, you know, move it into a bunch of crops, and those will sit over there alongside the copper, and we will basically be almost ready for the steam age, other than the fact that I'm still looking for one more thing, which is a stick reed, and thank god that those gave their seeds. I've just been kind of building in the background while this has been happening, by the way. I'm sure you've been noticing. Now, I thought this was going to be some sort of bonsai, but this looks entirely different because it's lemons. It's lemons? Okay, alright, I guess. Can I plant you? I cannot. Okay, so we gotta wait until it's fully grown again, and then we can try to transfer the lemon seeds, but things are starting to look good down here. I need a lot more redwood. We've also just gotten another really spiky boy right here while I was walking around, so this might be something of importance. It might be bamboo, maybe? I don't know. I don't know why bamboo would be spiky, but I don't know. I'm just kind of giving some guesstimates as I'm watching over this stuff. We've also got, I think, another bonsai growing right there, which is nice, and something here. I'm still waiting for this to grow again so I can actually try again, because this is different than flax. So, remember purple mushroom? Well, now there's blue mushroom and blue glow shroom. Okay, cool. So it's the same thing but blue. Those looked like they were wild carrots again. Still can't harvest those. I was 1000% correct on my guess at bamboo on that. Those are potatoes, so we don't care about these. Let's see here. I unintentionally trampled this thing. Still no word out on those. These I will want to move in a minute. These are about ready. These look like they're radishes. Sugar beets. So we've got beetroot, basically. And still just waiting on that to grow. We're very close, though. Very, very, very close. You know, I just realized I was muted again for all of that, but I'm sure I was, you know, yapping about it with editing me, but yeah, no, why is that called that way? And yay, we got aluminum, which is good, don't get me wrong, that's great. It's just not one we necessarily need yet. So we are going to have to reset the field. I will be taking that aluminum and giving it its own little corner over here. But we're going to need to reset the field here in a minute and basically set up for another set. I am kind of glad we did get a fair bit of things that we were after. Just, I'm a little bit sad as well that we didn't get everything we wanted. Yeah, we'll try again. We'll get moving. We'll move on and this will be good. I'm very sad. I have lost the lemon in the attempt to replant it. It was lost. I still am not able to identify this one. But our lemons have been lost. You know, it's one thing when you have to spend a lot of time remaking all of your gear and all of your stuff that you've been working on for a while. But it's another thing when the game entirely beats you in the face. See, I wanted to bring this clip back with something that was actually fun and funny. I've got some stuff to show you, and I've got a glitch to report to the Gravestones mod people, actually. Yeah, we're gonna just walk around over to here, and we're going to showcase the wonderful pain that is my death. See, for some odd reason, I don't understand how, in a scenario where I was being attacked by a giant zombie and blinded by a different zombie, might I mention, I was knocked back to here, standing, I believe, on this step, actually, and the zombie a zombie killed me. It snuck up behind me with a iron sword in its hand, and it just straight up, like, killed me. When I respawned, my items were gone. So all of my gear was gone, my lunchbox, all the food that was inside of it, yeah, all of it was gone. And I was working on doing some building at the time. And, you know, I wanted this next clip to be fun because I wanted to show you, like, hey guys, look at what I've been busy doing, look at what I've been working on. But the additive to that is, and, you know, I'm doing this in the middle of the recuperation, and I figured, you know, it'd be fun to. The water, for some odd reason, like, in this setup, decided, nah, I'm going to flow out here, and deleted my entire field of crops that I had started growing, bar these two. And over here did the same thing to all of my trees and all of my crop sticks that I had, everything. I've lost everything. I've lost everything that this episode has been working towards, basically, and I just placed that really in the wrong spot. Yeah, I've lost a lot of things for this. But so, seeing as Gravestone's mod is literally built to keep you from losing your stuff, and it glitched out in a way where it straight up deleted my items. I know that this is slightly cheaty. I know that some of you are going to be upset. I basically gave myself well, I didn't give myself the weapons. I still had, or the material. I still had to go gather it. But I basically just gave myself the tool EXP that I was roughly at. And the thing is I already know that this is not at all like 100% accurate because the pickaxe was at a higher repair value or something. Like, basically, point being is I've been spending a lot of time, and to just make up for it, I gave myself the tool EXP that I'm supposed to have, because what the frick happened here? Like, I'm very kind of annoyed with it. It bothers me, but yeah, no. Anyways, I wanted to get this clip in and just be like, yeah, we've lost everything. We're almost there though. We're almost there. I am so prepared to get into the Steam Age at this rate. Oh my god, you do not know how long this stupid thing has taken. Oh my god. We are finally back at a point where I'm semi-happy. I'm still doing a little bit of building, so we're gonna go through and do that tiny little bit more of the episode, but oh my god. You don't know how long this has taken. Some of you have already seen this from the prior clip, but we finally got tin ore berries. We also got gold ore berries going. I filled out this entire crop field with nothing but ore berries, so we've got plenty of stuff to pull from. And some of you may have also seen, not only in the background over there, but also down here in this wonderful little area. And I have started to repopulate this field since the last clip. But I have made an entire field of stickweed. And stickweed is one of the things we need for the Steam Age, which is absolutely great. So I'm going to finish everything up here, and then we're going to go through one final wrap up before I call it an episode and move in to the Steam Age in proper. Hell yeah, just a little tiny bit more. So with that, I spent some time and finished off the Steam Age room, and then decided that it was about time to finally work on finishing up the Getting Started quests. This is probably one of the biggest mistakes I've ever made. Dear Lord, this is a mess. So, we're currently looking for quicksand. Quicksand is a very rare block which only appears in a couple of biomes, despite what the Biomes of Plenty text says within the mods wiki. Yeah, no, quicksand is absolutely terrible here in GTNH because it only appears in one location. And let's just be honest, this is quite a large adventure. I spend many hours. This is probably like an 8-hour condensed clip. I was able to find this really cool desert thinking, oh hey, there'll be quicksand here in the desert, right? No, God, no, you do not understand. There is nothing here. This is basically really great for me because it gives me all the sand I could want, but yeah, nothing else. I spent a fair bit of time just looting around some random stuff, and I'm inevitably able to find some really cool stuff, like holy water, which I'm apparently not holy enough to drink, but then inevitably decide to leave, get it going, and end up finding this really cool dungeon that I decide to take some time and stop in at. This is a horrible mistake. In fact, we're about to lose some pretty major stuff, and I'm about to spend way more time on this adventure than I need to. I mean, I do end up finding some good loot, which I do end up inevitably taking home, but there is a major sacrifice in the wings coming for us. As I descend a little bit deeper, I end up finding some pretty dangerous mobs, in all honesty. Things are definitely not the best, and I'm 100% not prepared for everything that I'm going at here. I nearly die many times, and in fact do die here pretty early on, but when I finally make my way back and remember to set my spawn point, it's honestly just as bad. Most of the mobs here still are taking a massive amount of health with every single hit. And that's just because like armor in this mod is not very kind for you. It's honestly probably one of the most useless things sometimes. Mobs attack so fast that they just shred through your armor. When they don't shred through through your armor, they basically deal so much damage it's not even funny, and everything else just kind of sucks. I end up trying to use some like alternative stuff and gather myself some lava whenever I see some enemies, but I mess up, and this enemy that's following me right here right now is absolutely bullcrap. He takes like 0 damage from my sword, so running was really my only option. There's plenty of other problems, and honestly, fighting some of these mobs is basically jump scare after jump scare. I do find this really weird thing right here with the lava, by the way, which was just awkward, and I'm able to find an extra wrench that I do end up taking. I then also stumble across this big hole here, which has a bunch of zombies nearby, which, dear lord, this should have been the sign for me to turn back when I did, but, you know, I didn't. It really was just a lull, I guess, never mind. And yeah, nearly die again. Find the really cool, funny jukebox room, and also find just a random little vein of ore that seemed really cool. I also find some arrows of healing and have a really kind of smart idea for a moment of like, wait a minute, I can heal myself with that with this bow, and then I nearly get killed by this creeper who just appeared out of nowhere, but like he apparently didn't deal damage, so I'm very lucky, and I'm able to use a few of those arrows as healing for me. This honestly is part of the reason why I don't think I did turn back, but I do inevitably go down yet another floor, and oh dear lord, this is where hell opens up. Honestly, everything on this floor is where it's way out of my league. You're expected to have steel or better stuff by the time you get here, and just look at how many zombies are coming down this hallway. Like, are you kidding me? There are way too many, and all of them have something fancy about them. And look at the gear that they're in. Like, I nearly die here without even doing stuff, and then in a panic, I unintentionally throw my healing on the floor, and then have to very carefully like puzzle this thing out while there's a bunch of zombies that are inches away from being able to kill me. Then finally shoot myself in the head a few times with this stuff so that I'm actually, you know, getting a bunch of healing out of this. And then hopefully, you know, survive this. But I inevitably realize, like, every time I kill a zombie, about 3 more arrive until, yay, I'm finally able to break my way in. Of course, I should have remembered every time I kill a zombie, 3 more arrive. And I just want you to watch this little guy right here. Just watch. Just watch. He's fine, but just watch for the little guys here. Watch how much they destroy me. Like, there is now 6 of them in here. And I have the really smart idea of, okay, because there's way too many and a baby zombie is running after me. I noticed it out of the corner of my eye. I decided, hey, I'm heading back to that cave. And then I get fishing pulled in by one of them that was still in the crypt area. And now you get to see what the baby zombies really can do. Look at him. This death, by the way, cost me my axe. So with that, I kind of decided that the mattock was actually going to be more of a permanent structure on my toolbar, just because really, in all honesty, it already is an axe, and I could use it to get rid of the shovel as well, but I decided it was just better to keep that. I used some of the hoppers and chests that I had pillaged from the dungeon to improve upon the build, and then decided it's time to get back adventuring and looking for more quicksand. 1 eternity later. Yeah, so, hi, I found myself all the way very far out in the middle of a mesa, basically, and found this really cool village, but was about to perish. And I basically nearly got exploded, nearly got shot. Like, mobs were hunting me furiously, and I just said, screw it, I'm going in. And there was so many more baby zombies, so many more big zombies. Like, I was just prepping for hell, and I kind of just started scrounging around looking for what I can, using the village guards as helpers where I could, and just trying to make sure that all the villagers here were relatively safe, just in case I needed them for anything. I get a feeling I will need some villagers at some point, but I haven't really seen an insane usage for them. I also kind of am a little bit of an idiot here and don't really care to close the doors behind me for some odd reason. I have no idea. But anyways, I find this really cool castle at the edge of the village. Yeah, there's like nothing in here at all. It's so cool, and then there's nothing at all for it. It's really stupid. So I decided to head back to the desert and run off again in a slightly different direction. However, my running was very quickly cut short, as I have basically exhausted all of my food supplies at this point, and I was being really, really stupid. So I am about to start starving, and I'm like, screw it, I need to start collecting some food, just make sure that I can survive if necessary, and grab whatever I can and just immediately down it. And then finally, I find the biome that I've been looking for. This funny, weird, like mahogany jungle biome. Yeah, I don't know what to call it exactly, but there it is, the quicksand. Yeah, I was overly ecstatic about it when I finally found it. There's some really fun stuff though, and I'm now getting killed by 3 separate mobs here right now. There's, I think, a spider, which just shot me with stuff, a skeleton, and whatever the frick that thing is. Yeah, I have no idea what that mob is. I still haven't gotten a name for it. But, what the hell? It fires basically non-explosive wither skulls of blinding, like, and major damage. And, oh yeah, remember how I was very, very, very hungry? Well, I did technically succeed in running away from the Danger Knight. but then immediately starved to death. And then, finally, after what felt like hours and hours and hours of pain, I dived right into the quicksand and gathered up as much of it as I could. And after a quick 10 minutes of mining, I finally got the monster trap quest completed. Look, it's been quite a little bit since that last clip that I showed you guys, but I think I'm basically there. There's one tiny little quest remaining. I mean, there's the quest that you guys saw that I went on the other day, which was the quest for the quicksand, which, you know, we've now finished. But there is one slight, tiny little annoyance, and it's this damn tea leaf. I'm still working on said tea leaf, and you will probably see that as we, you know, finish that up. But I wanted to show you what all we've technically done this episode as I prep for, you know, the outro and ending of it. And what better place to start than this wonderful little crafting room that has ended up becoming kind of my main location. I originally built this place out of the mountain with this chest wall kind of staying exactly where it has for all time, and just have added onto it and built more chests up and inevitably built the room around it. And as we now approach the end of the episode, I decided I wanted to spend some time and decorate it, make it look a little bit more, you know, complete. There's one more thing I wanted to do before I called it an episode, though, and it's something that I've found that is unbelievably cool about NEI, and I hope you guys are gonna think this is really cool as well. But I've gone through and reorganized some of my bookmarks just because, well, I kind of felt I wanted to and kind of felt I needed to, and we're gonna, well, actually, this can sit right here, but we're gonna have a little bit of fun here. And down over here, we made this wonderful little starter area, which I've gone through and updated a little bit. This is going to be where I kind of keep all of the, like, trophies throughout the series and whatnot. And then we've finally gone through and made this wonderful chimney out of the Tinker smeltery, added a bit more shelves here. We've got our EXP drain. We've got a wonderful little mini super smelter. It's not really doing too much, but it does enough, and it does what it needs to do for what we're after. Now, the last thing we need, and I'm just triple checking that I've got everything. Okay. I'm going to show you something really cool. So if you set up a nice and wonderful crafting chain through NEI, as I have found out, you can basically have it go through and use, like, or identify all the different pieces it's going to need. And then if you hit Shift-C, it goes through all of the different steps and crafts it for you. Now you have to go into here, go to inventory, go down to favorites, and increase the depth a little bit. And in all honesty, I've almost considered increasing it again. But it straight up auto crafts it for you from just the basic materials, as long as you have them, and says, yummy, that was good. And then boom, just like that, I've made the final iron chest that gets to slot itself right in there, finishing up our wonderful little chest grid. And earlier today, I went and finished up our drawer grid. Of course, in that wonderful set of clips, we went through and finally made the rest of our wonderful cactus farm. This being, you know, something that has been working for me in the background for a while, but has now been fully updated and enclosed in full all the way up for, I think it's 7 layers or something like that. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. It's 5 layers. But yeah, we've made a 5-layer cactus farm, which is now enclosed and built into the base. In front of that, we've got this wonderfully beautiful hallway, which has been adapted and worked on. It's got a nice little window overviewing the outer area, and all of these coke ovens are now set up to be able to adjoin and enter into this lower room. Additionally as well, like I mentioned in that last little micro clip, we built this mini room being what is going to be where we start the Steam Age in full. And of course, this episode's main project in full, this wonderful little farming area, which has been extended on to the outer edge of our base and has been filled with many materials we will need in the Steam Age, such as stickweed, woods of all different varieties, and of course the oreberry farm that we've been working on. One other final major thing that we have been developing upon has been this wonderful farming area outside, where I've been slowly gathering all of the different Pam's Harvest Craft seeds to build up all of the different foods that I could ever need for the farm. Additionally as well, the Pam's Harvest Craft gardens have had a nice little growth area, and we're basically just waiting on this thing to decide it wants to grow somewhere. But of course, this episode has mainly been focused on getting the build started and getting us moving. Future episodes are going to take longer, future episodes are going to be bigger, future episodes are going to be grander. This is barely just a scratch in the surface of what Gregtech really is. And of course, you know, for right now, I can kind of just enjoy, chill out, relax without having to think of too many crazy things that I need to do. The real biggest farm that we've worked on this episode being the cactus farm and the oreberry farm and all the other IC2 crops. But in the future, there will be a lot of different materials that I'll need to focus on passiving. There will be a lot of different building that I want to do. And of course, many, many more different micro projects that we will be working on. So what's coming next as we move forward in this project? Well, I mean, first off, it's Steam Age. Steam Age is one of the major developments in this entire project. I think I somehow angered that Enderman. I'm going to deal with him real quick. Little baby Enderman man. Where is he? As I was saying, what is actually next in this wonderful project? Well, like I said, it's starting the Steam Age, which is going to mainly take place around this area and building into what is going to be, well, our next steps of the base. You see, there's a few areas I strategically didn't finish off necessarily just yet until the future episodes. One of those being this little hole right here, which I'm in between using as either some sort of research area or some sort of development that I'm going to do, which will be involved with the Steam Age. And of course, this ominous door sitting at the end of the staircase that I've been patiently waiting to develop upon. The intent is that that door breaks out right here into what is going to become one of the bigger builds of the area. That build being something that is going to connect the entirety of major portions of the base. One thing that I haven't really mentioned a lot within this episode is exactly what I'm thinking this base is going to be and how I'm kind of leading my own design as I go through with it. And one of the major things that I'm trying to do with all of my different movements, patterns, and everything else is to overall kind of make it feel like a bit of a wander to get anywhere within the base. And that is something that I would like to continue with as we develop into this new area. because as I go through and have been moving and building around this base, I've wanted there to be a sort of connection and a sort of history to it. You see, I've mainly wanted to make it so that every single step of the way, we're making something new. We're building something that is different, and we're adding a new portion of this base into, well, the build. I wanted to feel like there is a history to everything within this world. As such, moving forward, one of the major areas that I'd like to develop upon is the outer area of this. This upper area is going to become what I have labeled Memoria, or the furthest back past location of the base. This is our humble beginnings. This is effectively a museum to the start of this world. And moving forward, what's going to come out of that little hole right there is going to be the promenade, which will include all of our Steam Age developments. And will look a little bit more steampunky, more, bronze, more brass, more oomph to it, and more stone built into this wall. What'll hopefully develop as we create that sort of outer boundary that wanders around is a deeper connection into the cave, into the mines that we can build around it, and furthermore, something to give this a more solid foundation for its history. Currently, right now, as a build, it sits atop the mountain and looks like it's been chiseled in, but I really want it to feel like it is built and set. Some of these areas, I've been, as I look at them, I feel as an architect that this is unstable, that over there could use a little bit more support, and there are some spots that I really feel are asking for more development, such as the underside of the chest room, and what better way to do that than by adding to the general walkway that goes around this and building that foundation into something that creates a sort of city. LV will really be the final stage that we're using this type of area. LV is going to be sort of the great developments upon this base, where everything starts to look quite a fair bit more modernized and is going to start really catalyzing into what the main build is going to be, and the main sort of structural theming that I'm going to probably use for a lot longer afterwards. Of course, there will be developments. Of course, a lot is going to change as we improve upon this, but in terms of things that are going to, stay in this sort of historical, rustic fashion that I've kind of built so far, LV is that last step where things start to really look sort of, more modernized. And that'll just be because things such as like the coke oven or our general farm arrays, or even things such as like these wooden sidings that we've got set up will no longer need to be like mossed over or anything or feel overgrown and old. Everything will have electricity running through it, everything will feel lived in, and everything will start to sort of build out into this sprawling landscape around us. So let's continue to talk about future plans. My intent has kind of been that inevitably this area right here will inevitably depreciate in value for us. And that's because inevitably we will probably move down following the curve of this mountain into this sort of valley between these two hills. This mountain being a smaller one that we've seen earlier in the episode, and this kind of leading to something that can work as a major development area for everything we're doing. Now, as my Stone Age base is already feeling pretty massive, this is going to sprawl and encapsulate a lot of the mountain areas around here, and just because I'm highlighting more up here doesn't mean we aren't using over here, or even up into here. Really, in all honesty, this temperate rainforest that I've kind of found myself in is really, in all honesty, going to be altogether the encapsulation of my base. There isn't one singular spot out of here in this temperate rainforest that I'm really thinking I won't want to use at some point. So we're probably going to start developing upon the roadways and the movements between everywhere as we move through a lot of the future episodes in LV and the Steam Age. The Steam Age is going to focus more around the Stone Age bases, mountain top vista, and the glass dome that will encapsulate said vista. However, we're inevitably going to want to take those roads, send them down the mountain into what is going to become the very, very old road to Memoria, which will be then encapsulated by the main workings of the base. Now, I'm not sure exactly how I'm going to build that yet. This is a very much work in progress. It's very much an idea that I've been developing upon, and furthermore, it's still got a lot of work to do. I mean, I still want to identify a lot of important views from up here because Memoria is home for this world. It is where we begin. And as such, I really, really, really want it to feel like a core cogwork piece that, you know, even though we may not inevitably exactly live in here, I want the entirety of the sprawling landscape that we develop upon to sort of look to it, making sort of an all roads lead to home sort of aesthetic, so to speak. But with that, there is currently only 2 more things that remain, and ahem, if that tea plant will grow yet. Why must you hate me, motherfucker? Why do you suck so much? Why do you just wish to cause problems? Excuse me. Modded mobs can deal damage to me while I'm in spectator, just showcasing stuff? What the frick? I can't attack you while I'm in this mode, but you can just come up and nearly kill me. Jesus. Also, yes, I have been using spectator mode just to showcase some stuffs, okay? It's important that you guys get to see stuff, and I have cheats enabled basically solely for the sole purpose of showcase, nothing else. Once I get flight anyways, my use of spectator is going to entirely dissipate because, well, I'll just fly around and showcase stuff that way. And there's one other tiny little thing that we're waiting on. The entry into the Steam Age, which I might already have prepped and ready and have been sitting on it for quite a while just so that I could, you know, build up the suspense and whatnot, but ahem. Tea plant, and the quest for tea began. Honestly, this was nowhere near as bad as quicksand. The herbal garden is relatively rare, but it spawns in a few biomes, so it was nowhere near as bad. It just took me a lot of scrounging and a lot of clicking in hopes that it finally showed up. And when it did, I was so unbelievably happy. I'm finally free! Okay, I can finally get us our last thing, but I really should make a seed out of this and just go from there, so I'm going to do that because if I don't, it's going to be stupid, and I'm going to have messed up something that I really shouldn't mess up because, yeah, we can do that. Okay, let's get this thing planted. Let's wait for it to grow, and then I will continue in a bit. Give me that. I did that the wrong way. But, boop. And there we go. We have got our tea that can be made. It looks like we need a little bit of something else. Oh, no. You just cook it. You just cook it. Okay. Okay, it's pretty simple. So if all is to be believed, I cook that, and I cook myself a grape that we gathered while also on that adventure. And we get a cup of tea and some raisins. And there we are, food variants. The last quest of And So It Begins. Oh my god, it's finally over. 100% of the first chapter of GTNH. Look, it's even got the nice little check mark right there. I mean, I guess there's nothing else to do but eat these, you know. Yum and yum. You know, I was kind of hoping that would just magically spawn a cup into my hand, but yeah, it's whatever. Alright. Finally, I think we should do it. I think it's time we enter the Steam Age, everybody. First Steam. You shall proceed. There it is. That's the magic noise that I was waiting for. Oh my god. Well, alrighty everybody. You've seen it here first. Next episode is the Steam Age. Have a good one, everybody, and I'll let the outro do the outro. So, with that, as I said, thank you all so much for watching. This has been, honestly, really crazy. I've not done a video like this before, as I'm sure many who are repeat viewers to the channel know. This is unlike anything I've ever done. It's a full-out movie, and I'm hoping you guys will continue to enjoy as I continue to make my way through the rest of this mod pack. We had a lot of fun today, but honestly, this is barely the tip of the iceberg, as all Gregtech New Horizon players know. I haven't even scratched the surface, and really, at the end of the day, I spent way too long in this. Like, my end time was about 80 hours doing all this, but really, in all honesty, if I really focused on it, I could have gotten to this point by the end of about 16 or 20-ish. So, with that, let's look forward to a bright new future and the fun that comes with it as we make our first steps into the Steam Age. See y'all in the next one, everybody. Have a good one, and bye-bye.